Shade sent me this earlier. I also saw this on my Hot Topics channel. I thought this one was interesting because I've heard so many good things about Warframe. So let's see.
Warframe is a wake-up call. Look, the phrases free-to-play and live service, whether by themselves or in combination with one another, don't fill players with a lot of confidence, and they shouldn't, because they become synonymous with games and studios that are under-delivering on a product and service while asking for the absolute most from their audience. More time, more engagement, more money, extracting as much as they possibly can while putting in the least amount of effort. Warframe...
I don't think every free-to-play game does that. I think free-to-play is actually a beautiful thing because there's a lot of people in a lot of countries that can't afford really expensive video games. And so it allows them to be able to play games and have access. And even like, you know, I remember being a kid and not having any money. And it's like getting my parents to buy me a game was like a bit like a Herculean task. But being able to get a free-to-play game, you know, that's nice. It gets people into it. So like, I think there's goods, but I'm not taking away from the rhetoric, which just because I think he's probably still right. But
well-known yet under-discussed and underappreciated games in all of gaming. It's often referred to as the internet's best-kept secret, and I'm tired of it being a secret. For all intents and purposes, Warframe is the blueprint by which many of these free-to-play games and live service games should be following, but they're not. It's a game that is tirelessly supported by its developer and by its community in a way that I don't even think any other game can even replicate. And
I'm friends
once
with
you guys hear about some of this stuff, it's going to blow your mind.
from Warframe, and they treat them super well. It's actually crazy.
It's supposed to be a way for developers to be able to deliver a smaller product and grow it over time. Be able to deliver a valuable service, a valuable product, and grow it while the community supports it. And that's the kind of game that Warframe is. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Luckily, today's sponsor is actually the game that inspired Warframe. I've played World of Tanks multiple times over the years with my friends. This is an easy suggestion. Whether
all right, we're skipping ahead.
Just use it's a looter. 6 tanks for 10 battles each. Just use the link in the description below to get started. So what is Warframe? It's a looter shooter, live service MMO with a third-person perspective. You play as a Warframe, you're dashing through levels, taking down enemies, farming up materials, currency, and other items so that you can continue to build.
Holy shit, there's so much stuff. I'm already overwhelmed.
Warframes vary in their looks and abilities. Some of them play like a ninja, others like a battering ram or even a wizard. There's even a frame that lets you create your own music so that you can buff other players. You have pets, ships, clans, PvP, personal housing, boss fights, a roguelike, a fighting game, open worlds, and more. It has consistently stayed in the top 20 of the most played games on Steam for over a decade now, and in doing that, there is something inherently special here. If we look at the game's player base on Steam, while it's not burning the world down with insane peaks, it's maintained its player base consistently since 2013, and it's only continued to grow. So how has Warframe maintained that success? Why is nobody talking about it?
I know that they're actually super nice. Well, first off, I know someone that works there, and like they treat their employees super well. I know that every time there's like a big expansion or a big update, they always sponsor Seagull, and they're super nice to Seagull and his wife Shade. And they're just very like they're always just like they just treat like creators who come to their game like super well. They're just, which you might not think is a big deal, but you'd be surprised how often you're just treated as like some random number. They don't do that, apparently. I haven't personally worked with them. I've actually thought about playing Warframe, but apparently it's really hard to get into if you've never played before. I've been told that at some point they're working on trying to make it new player friendly. At some point, like make it better, like for the new player experience. So I'm kind of waiting on that.
Unlike many other live service games, why aren't we hearing people complaining about it or how it mistreats its players? Well, to answer that, we need to understand the game's history and that of its creators. Now, you may recognize the name Digital Extremes. Renowned for their early work on Unreal Tournament in partnership with Epic Games, they played a pivotal role in shaping the landscape of multiplayer first-person shooters. They were among the first to popularize key features like online multiplayer, power weapons, team deathmatch, and capture the flag, laying the ground for many of the multiplayer games that we play today. After parting ways with Epic Games, as Epic went on to make Gears of War with Xbox Studios, they decided to pitch their own game idea, and they tried to do it for over a decade. That game was called Dark Sector. They struggled to find a publisher for this dark sci-fi MMO concept that they had, and ultimately Digital Extremes was forced into doing work for hire just to be able to keep the company afloat. The decision to take on work-for-hire projects while necessary for financial stability came with its own difficulties. The studio faced a cycle of hiring employees for specific projects and then laying them off once that project concluded. This
That
practice
sucks.
is commonplace for work-for-hire studios. However, it disrupted the lives of their employees and their families, a situation that the studio founder has regretted since then. He believed that publishers often lacked a clear vision, and that Digital Extreme
Wasn't like the Call of Duty, like wasn't there a studio that Call of Duty uses for a lot of like their updates and like little stuff? Is it Raven Software or something? I don't know. There was like one like smaller studio that was apparently like they used to work with, used to do really good work, so then they brought them in as like full time. Something like that. Am I misremember? I don't know if I'm remembering the whole story correctly. I remember hearing about it during like COVID.
would have been better off just focusing on smaller, self-controlled projects, as seen with independent studios that tend to produce higher quality
No, I'm
work
not married.
when they're given full creative control. Despite the continuous efforts to pitch Dark Sector to publishers, the studio continued to face rejection, primarily due to a lack of interest when it came to sci-fi games on the side of publishers, a sentiment that somehow never even changed even with the success of Halo. In a desperate move, Digital Extremes caved to a publisher's demands, shifting Dark Sector from a sci-fi MMO to a game that emulated the success of Resident Evil 4 at the time. This change involved transforming the protagonist from a space ninja to a CIA operative named Hayden Tenno, which strayed very far from the original concept. The new version of Dark Sector struggled to be able to find an audience, however, it eventually did and gained respectable reviews as well. After the release of Dark Sector, the industry started to trend away from AA releases to AAA games, and this made for more issues at Digital Extremes. The studio, which had previously worked on BioShock's multiplayer and The Darkness 2, found itself struggling to find any contracts as they began to dry up and publishers wanted to start making games in-house.
You know what's funny? You said that about trending towards AAA games. I feel like nowadays it's trending away from AAA games.
Observing the success of free-to-play games like World of Tanks in 2010, Digital Extremes saw an opportunity in an emerging market. They didn't see free-to-play as a way to be able to milk players. They recognized and saw the potential to be able to create something smaller and grow the game over time rather than trying to pursue a traditional release. Facing imminent financial collapse with only 12 months of funds remaining, Digital Extremes decided to pursue a long-held vision for what used to be Dark Sector, and then was now codenamed Lotus. Within 2 months, they developed a working demo featuring spaceship raids and procedurally generated loot and layouts with an emphasis on co-op and PvE gameplay, recognizing there was a gap in the market. They approached free-to-play publishers asking for support, but they were getting rejected yet again. Undeterred, Digital Extremes decided to self-fund the project with only 9 months of funds remaining, wanting to give it their all rather than simply just walk away. The development of the alpha version of the game saw significant involvement from Rebecca Ford, an intern who led the creation of their community team. This team was crucial in gathering and responding to player feedback, a strategy that helped shape the game's development and ultimately its success. Embracing the success of Kickstarter
Does this end up turning into
campaigns that were
Warframe?
going on at the time, Digital Extremes introduced supporter packs to raise additional funds. This approach, while initially slow, proved ultimately effective and demonstrated that there was an audience for their game. Thus, Warframe was born, a game over a decade in the making, who had faith in itself. Scorned by an industry, nobody else wanted to make it except for them. It released into beta on Steam in 2013
feels good story.
to over 20,000 players and has only continued to grow since. Over the years, I've come to realize that the vast majority of the studios that we grew up loving, the games that we grew up loving, the biggest studios and publishers that are out there all came from very similar humble beginnings, but the vast majority of them forgot about it. And the ones that don't end up being the ones that are the most loved.
I don't think they, actually, I disagree. I don't think they forgot. I actually don't think they forgot at all. I think those people don't typically work there anymore. I think that once a game blows up or a big company goes crazy with it and like either gets bought out or sold or whatever, changes hands, new team comes in, whatever. Like we've seen it in Overwatch a little bit. Like the original team that was once there and originally made the game is all gone, pretty much. There's probably only a handful of people. So games are made by people, not by companies, right? Like that might sound stupid, but once all the people that had the idea and the creative mind to make that product no longer there, yeah, the IP still exists, but the original idea is gone. So when he says like, oh, they all forgot, it's like, well, I bet they didn't. I bet whenever they went on to their next project or they retired or whatever it is, I bet they still remember it. I bet they still, absolutely do that. But the overall IP, it sometimes becomes big
Appreciate
corpa
it.
and
Look at Larian Studios. Their story is almost identical to Digital Extremes. They started off making their own games to limited
Hey, what's
success.
Larian?
They did work for hire for a while just to be able to keep the doors open. When that industry started to dry up and move away, they went to go make their own game, and Divinity
BG3?
Original Sin. They
Oh.
danced with bankruptcy, almost losing the entire
No
studio.
shit.
But they found an audience that wanted to support it, and now look at them. Baldur's Gate 3 is heralded as one of the greatest games of all time. They blew up as they
But
deserved.
don't people always say now that like a game like BG3 will never happen again because of how much effort it took to get and how much money it took to get, and like genuinely like they don't think it like that might not ever happen again. And I remember like people were arguing on Twitter when that came out and was like, don't expect BG3 to be an industry standard. This will never happen again.
Deserve to do so. When I look around the industry right now, I see a lot of studios that are making games not because they want to make them, but because they're profit motivated. Purely profit motivated. They no longer look at players as anything other than tools for...
I have no problem with companies and games wanting to be profit motivated though. Like anyone should make money. Like if you live in a capitalist, society, you need to make money. The more money you make, the more stuff you can do. It unlocks things to you. And a game and a publisher and all this shit, like same thing. However, though, there's a difference between that and when you take it too far and you just start kind of viewing all of your players as another dollar sign that you need to farm, And it's like, I think that a lot of people in good faith will buy things that they actually think is good. But if you just start turning out bullshit just to get more stuff, it's like, well,
making money.
That's when you get people mad at you.
Rather than looking at them for what they actually are, which is a means to be able to deliver a higher quality product, use their feedback and their information to be able to earn their money, and then by extension, make your game even that more popular. Because when players are happy, they tend to talk about it a heck of a lot more. And I've also noticed that, games...
Yes and no. It's weird. Helldivers is what comes to mind about games that are doing well and positive or talked well before all the shit. Like I remember just seeing meme after meme after TikTok meme after TikTok meme after Twitter meme after YouTube videos, like all memes of like how good and positive the game is. But on the reverse side, can't pretend that
games are a form of art. And without soul, there is no
the
art.
negative side
and
doesn't
in the
also
case
get
of
attention.
Games, I think a lot of players are starting to wake up and realize they can see it in your trailers, they can see it in your gameplay, they can see it when the soul isn't there. And when they know it's there and they see it's there, they're into that game. But when they don't see it, they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think that's why we've seen a lot of games over the last few years fail. Digital Extremes started out with great intentions, to be honest with you. But that doesn't mean that they didn't make the same mistakes that many other free-to-play and live service games make time and time again, and that's with its monetization. But the difference is they learn from their mistakes. I don't think anybody can
Got another game. Back to our actual content.
disagree with this. Recently, over the last few years, both live service and free-to-play games have permeated through every space in the entire gaming industry. Every single company wants their Fortnite, Counter-Strike, Genshin Impact, whatever it might be, and of course they would, because they draw in revenues. It would make you wonder why anybody would ever want to make another full-priced game again. But with the introduction of free-to-play live service games, we've seen year over year, month over month, players are losing ground, losing choice, and losing their money. Free-to-play has become synonymous with cutting content and player achievement and putting a price tag on it. While the gameplay itself is free, the model has incentivized developers to paywall everything in the game or put in absurd time restrictions and hurdles for players to be able to overcome just so they can try to earn anything with their own time or their own skill.
Yeah.
Studios today are incentivized to actively harm the player experience and lower the quality of the overall product, all in the name of higher profits.
Hard to argue that one.
Digital Extremes was incredibly nervous about getting into free-to-play because they were afraid that they were going to do it wrong, and in fact, they did. At first, they started selling power, and it wasn't the reputation that they wanted to create for themselves. At the creation of Warframe, you could double the capacity of your mod or skill tree slots in your Warframes. However, there was no way to be able to earn this in-game, and the only way that you could get it was by paying for it with real money. Early on, before the game's beta release, Digital Extremes saw the players' feedback regarding this issue and removed it and any other perceived pay-for-power microtransactions, vowing for fair monetization
That's
to be
actually
a
pretty
core
cool.
tenet of the studio moving forward. In that move, and other changes that they made due to their deep involvement in the early foundations of their game's community, they fostered a positive community spirit and gained even more
What is this
support.
movement?
In an interview 6 years ago with Danny O'Dwyer of No Clip Documentaries, they mentioned how difficult it was for them to be able to find any marketing or visibility because at the time, nobody wanted to touch free-to-play games. However, the positive community that they had already started to culture, the fact that they had been listening to their community, ended up catching the attention of the late great commentator Total Biscuit, who came to cover the game and catapult its popularity into the mainstream. I think that this is one of the most valuable lessons for Digital Extremes or any company to learn, and it's that good things happen to good developers, especially those who treat their players as well as Digital Extremes and listens to their feedback.
True.
Game developers large and small need to recognize that they are providing a product and service to us.
There is a caveat though. If they do fuck up, a lot of times it's kind of hard to ever go back.
Not the other way around. The expectation is on them to create a fun, fair, entertaining, and valuable experience in exchange for our money. When I see game developers posting on Reddit talking about how they hate gamers because of YouTube live stream comments, or how a lead Starfield developer makes a Twitter thread saying, "Funny how disconnected some players are from the realities of game development, and yet they speak with complete authority." I mean, I can guess what it takes to make a Hostess Twinkie, but I don't work in the factory, so what the hell do I know, really? Not a lot. And neither of these opinions that these people have are in the...
You know what's funny? I mean, I'm going to let him finish, but that was one of the big things with Concord. Like, Concord, when it was not being received very well, one of their devs went on Twitter and was like, basically, I don't remember exactly what they said, but basically like, yeah, you don't want to play our game. I don't want you to play our game because you guys are idiots or something like that. And then nobody did.
Minority of opinions. With what authority do players speak? With their money. They are your paying customers.
That is a very good point, because sometimes people really overreact to things too, and they like, this thing is so expensive, nobody's buying it, like I don't know what they're doing. But then like, you know, if a bunch of people buy it, then they like the product, right? So like, it goes both ways.
While players may not know exactly how to voice their concerns, and oftentimes will do it in the wrong way, you still should be listening to them because they are telling you that something is wrong with your game. And at the end of the day, all they want is a better product, which only serves to make you more money in the end. We've seen developers stray from the side of players. However, how many developers have you seen remove a microtransaction from their game because players were using it too much? When Warframe introduced colors for their pet skins...
That's actually a great question. How many games have done that? I actually can't think of one. I know, like, I remember like the Star Wars Battlefront stuff, what they did was like, they didn't remove it, they made it easier, because like it was borderline impossible to like unlock certain characters or something, or get certain items or abilities, but you could buy them. And then it was like, remember, like it was like it's like the most downvoted thing on Reddit in history, where it's like, we wanted players to have a sense of reward or like achievement when they bought this item. It was like, shut the up. But they didn't get rid of it. They just made it easier to get it as a free-to-play player.
They didn't realize that they had inadvertently created a gambling mechanic where players were trying to search for the rarest skin colors and the combinations that they wanted. DE saw that a player had rolled his pet's color 200 times and their stomach sank. Within a day and a half, they had removed the mechanic from the game and reworked it without the need for player feedback. The spirit of that can be found throughout the entire game. As of a recent update, now everything in the game, just about everything in the game, is earnable in-game with very few outliers. Warframe uses Platinum as its in-game premium currency, and it's fully tradable. Players can go out, farm valuable resources, mods, weapons, and Warframe blueprints, and then trade with other players without ever even spending a dime. You would think that this is trapped behind some type of
so then how do they make money?
Or something, right?
Skins?
No, you can start doing this within the first 15 to 20 hours of playing the game. I was already trading items with other players and stockpiling currency from the minute that I had started. While players still have the option to buy anything that they want from the game's in-game shop, all of those things, or at least the vast majority of them outside of cosmetics and color palettes, can be earned in-game. So, Mr. YouTuber, that means that Warframe must have the most difficult and high-end equipment behind paywalls or something, right? It has to be insanely difficult to get. No. The pinnacle warframes and weapons are called primes. You can earn these by cracking relics, and you get relics constantly while you're playing the game. When you go to do these missions to crack the relics, you're playing with 4 players, and all 4 of you can choose to use the exact same relic, which would then increase your chances of being able to get what you wanted, because everybody can choose from everyone else's rewards.
What? Yeah, I gotta keep watching that after. That's crazy. Let's continue.
Meaning that even if you're in a party that isn't coordinated and you're all running different relics, if you don't get what you want out of yours, you can just get a copy of somebody else's thing if it's more valuable. You can choose to get whatever you want. Every weapon, every frame, companion, and otherwise is at your fingertips. You can earn your way through Warframe without ever even spending a dime, and many players have. There is no time wasting in Warframe. And what's even more crazier is that adding to this absurdity, they show players how not to spend money within their premium shop. If you go to their premium shop and look at any of the items available in it, next to every item, it tells you how to go earn that item in-game rather than spending money. They teach players how not to spend money in their shop. But that doesn't mean that players don't support the game.
That's crazy.
They do quite a lot, because by making things so accessible, giving massive discounts on their currency and things like that, being able to just get all the things that you want in the game by playing it, players just want to spend money on the game because they want to support it, because they love the game so much, not because they feel like they need to. Imagine that. Imagine a world in which the players are not spending money on a game because they need to overcome some fabricated barrier that's put in place, and if they spend money, they're going to be able to get through it faster or get through it at all. No, instead, they're spending money because they actually want to support the game. They just are enjoying themselves and want to spend the money. Now, mind you, some of this is definitely driven by convenience, but
I am not played any Warframe, but like my original thought is like, dude, aren't they afraid of like people running out of content? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're always putting stuff at massive discounts and like you're able to get through everything, like what happens when you get to the end? And there's nothing to buy.
Vast majority
right?
of players
what
just love the game and want to support it.
Is it because it's a lot of grinding?
There are areas worth criticizing. I'm still not a fan of the fact of them having 12 to 72 hour crafting timers on weapons and warframes. It's just too much. I don't know what else to say about it.
Wait, what does that mean?
And also there's a big
limitation. Wait, so instead of like buying an item, you have to craft it, and it takes between, what do you say, something 72 hours? Like 15 or whatever it was to 72 hours? So so you don't have to spend money, but you have to spend all this time crafting it. Oh, I understand. Okay, so that's what. Wow, wait. So wait, could you buy it instead of spending the money and not have to, or sorry, instead of crafting it, and then you don't have to deal with the like the waiting? Oh, so buying stuff actually speeds it up. Oh. Wait, now I understand. Okay, so that's what. Wow. Okay, all right, I get it now.
Weapon and warframe slots, inventory slots that are available early on for players. That's something that in general just needs to get fixed. But the thing is that the longer you play the game, the less those things become an issue, because you have so many other things that you're working on, leveling up, playing as, farming for, while all these other things are building in the background that you really don't even notice it all that much. And while there's room for improvement, this is largely the most ethical live service game I've ever seen monetized. And I don't think any other game wants to try to compete on those terms. They definitely don't want to compete on their content.
Okay, so this is actually, that was going to be my question, was the whole content thing. Huh, no shit. That's actually cool, though. Let's continue the real content. Well, actually, it is the real content, and they're going to tell us about the content, too.
Warframe's first turning point came when the game released on Steam, which marked a critical success and provided the studio with the necessary resources to be able to continue to support and develop the game. Unlike competitive shooters that can maintain an audience with minimal updates, Warframe faced the challenge of sustaining interest in a PvE-centric game, which is far more difficult. To overcome this, Digital Extremes heavily leaned on the experienced development team who had weathered the storm through the toughest times and possessed the deep institutional knowledge that was necessary to make the game successful. If it wasn't for the fact that they held on to their employees when the game and the studio was facing its closure, they likely would have never been able to make the game the success that it is today. In the years following the game's release on Steam, Warframe saw a rapid expansion in content. The studio introduced clans, player hubs, a plethora of new weapons and warframes, and diverse gameplay elements like open-world areas, vehicles, and space combat. But the most significant shift in the game's identity came with the release of The Second Dream, a cinematic quest that redefined Warframe as a game. This quest introduced fully voice-acted, high-quality cinematic experiences with intricate writing and storytelling that
was it mostly reading? It wasn't
from a
actually like voice acted and
free-to-play title
scripted?
to a truly exceptional experience. No longer was Warframe just a free-to-play game, it was just a great game that happened to be free-to-play. Digital Extremes continued to push boundaries with subsequent updates, including the new war, Whispers in the Walls, and the upcoming major update, Warframe 1999. These expansions demonstrate a level of writing, character development, and cinematic quality that's typically associated with AAA blockbuster titles and reflect nothing of what we've seen in typical free-to-play games. The studio's ambition to deliver high-end content remained evident with every release, further increasing the game's reputation among players both new and old. That's what's made the Warframe we have today.
And we're not kidding about the whole space combat
I was
thing.
the most shocked by was at one point I unlocked what I can best describe as Sea of Thieves in space. You get a railjack, a fully customizable ship that you can upgrade. It has multiple weapons that are controlled by other players in co-op. You hire NPCs to manage.
I do not want to make the comparison, but this reminds me of the ship from Starfield after you beat the game and you New Game Plus. Just saying. First thing I thought of.
Other ships, you can board other ships, steal other ships, and raid enemy bases. While the feature didn't land well on release and it had its issues, what is available today is an absolute blast to play, and it feels like it's completely native to the game and like it could have been there from the start. In the landscape of live service and free-to-play games, many developers opt for the safe approach, focusing on incremental updates and minor changes rather than undertaking any significant overhaul. This safe strategy often results in steady, gradual improvements, but most major additions and transformative changes end up being locked behind paid expansions, premium content, and microtransactions. Typically, free-to-play games and live service games will introduce minor tweaks, seasonal updates, and limited time offers to try to keep players engaged. While Warframe does the exact same thing, they aren't strangers to making big splashes with major updates, and all the while, they're not charging the players a dime. Other games with standard offerings can sometimes refresh the experience and provide new incentives to be able to log in, but they rarely bring the wide-sweeping changes that might significantly alter the gameplay or narrative, making the game overall feel more stale. I'll give kudos to games like Fortnite, who often radically change their map, put in new modes, and give more ways for players to be able to express themselves in games, like even creating their own games within Fortnite. However, the vast majority of games don't do this, and in combination with that lack of risk, they often let go of the developers that got them to where they are in the first place.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's 100%
the
the big
players
one.
that got them to where they are in the first place. And as a result, they hollow out their experience, leaving them with nowhere to go. There's too much focus on monetization, and it's leading to a disparity between the expectations of the player and the financial outlook of the developer. Today, we have developers that are understaffed, underpaid, under a lot of pressure, under-delivering to their audience, while for some odd reason the company is still expecting more money. You have CEOs that are out there projecting growing profit without investing in growing content. And their expectation is because you're playing, then you must be paying. And
I feel like this can all apply to us in Overwatch land more than maybe not more than most, but pretty well.
Look, just recently I saw with Apex Legends, the big drama that cropped up around it, where basically, long story short, developer goes in and makes it where you can no longer earn the next battle pass by completing the last battle pass.
Oh, this one was big.
Previously, you were able to. And they made these changes, gaslighting the players, saying that it's because we're trying to deliver you guys a more valuable experience. We're doing it because we're trying to grow the game, and we're giving you guys more value. That's really what it is. When anybody with any base level of intelligence can see how insulting it is to say something like that when it's so transparently not that. And they're not the only developer doing things like that. You see it across the board. So many developers that are making minor changes to their game, but all of their focus is on their monetization. How else they can shift and move things around to make it where they can make more money and you get less out of playing the game. And in that, The only thing that you're serving to do is make an audience that isn't loyal to you, that is just waiting, frothing at the mouth at the chance to be able to jump onto the next game and get as far away from you as they possibly can.
I feel like there's a lot of people in Overwatch land that applies to. But honestly, a lot of free-to-play games have fallen victim to that because they all basically have gotten very comfortable with the seasonal cycle, which, aka, if you don't know, the seasonal cycle is like every 2 months, Overwatch has a new season. Apex is like, I think, once every 2 or 3 months. Valorant also has a seasonal cycle. And so basically, free-to-play gamers cycle through a bunch of different games, depending on like what new piece of contents are out, or new agents, or new heroes, or new legends, or whatever things that are happening. But in the downtime between them, a lot of those like casual players just leave and they just go do whatever, and they go play the next thing, and they chase the next thing. So the hardcore players, the player that are dedicated to the game, will a lot of times feel left behind or left out because like they don't feel like they're being attended to, and they don't feel like they're being listened to very much because like on the developer side and on the corporate side, they're constantly chasing that massive bulk casual audience that comes in, buys all the new skins, buys whatever thing, and then leaves.
Sure, they're playing your game right now. Sure, it's popular right now, but that's because they don't
Like
really
me,
have...
I mean, I guess I do technically do it. I stream less nowadays during the middle of seasons or the middle of in between updates. Yeah, I absolutely do it because what's the point? Like my viewership is low. Everyone, it's not just me though. It's like everyone in the category. Everyone feels it. So I try not to think about that end too much. The game's kind of stale. There's not a whole lot happening. Viewership isn't that great. It's like, why not take this time to go play something? Like, I spent weeks playing Elden Ring, and Elden Ring was great. I had a blast playing Elden Ring, and then we made a video of it, and it's done really well, and people say they loved it. So it's like, you know, I get to try new things. I get to make new pieces of content that people enjoy. But if I was actually hardcore committed to Overwatch like all the time and do nothing else, I'd probably be miserable.
Have another option, and there's nothing else right now that's that hot. So once there is something...
And there are Overwatch streamers and players who do that. And you can tell they are not having a great time.
that hot that comes out, you're done. That's it. Players are a valuable resource, and you need to value them. They provide you everything that you need to be successful, both creatively and financially. And if you use them the appropriate way, you can be huge, you can be massive. And while that's not the truth for every single game, because every single game is different, they have a different audience, they have a different use case, not everybody plays the same kind of games. When you value them, they keep you afloat. They help you grow. And in the case of Digital Extremes and Warframe, I don't think that there's another developer that's out there that appreciates their audience the same way or does the same things that Digital Extremes does with their audience.
Small thing that they do, I believe it's what they do because I've been to one, is like they have like events or little parties at like every big major convention, like PAX. I went to the one, I got invited to the one at PAX East. It's funny, I don't want to bash Twitch, but I got invited to Twitch's partner party, and I got invited to Warframes. And I went to the Twitch one, and it was embarrassingly bad. Like it was like in a King's bowling alley. There was like 25 people, and there was like literally like a very small tray. Like I'm talking like enough for like 2 to 3 people under a heat lamp with like 3 or 4 chicken wings, and then a bucket of warm, like 4 or 5 warm Bud Lights. And I went, yeah, I'm out of here. And then I went to the other one, and it was like in a bar next to in a hotel next to the convention center, and the line snaked literally like this around the around the lobby. And I felt bad jumping it because like I wasn't planning on staying there very long, but like I got invited to be there, so it was like a little bit different. So I walked in, I was like, oh my god, there's a bajillion people here. And then I got walked in with Emong, because we knew some people that ran the event. It was great. And they had literally like this whole sprawl of food, like almost like buffet style, where you go up and grab stuff. They have a full bar. It was very much top tier. Like they wanted to take care of their players, wanted to take care of their fans, wanted to take care of their partners. And it's like, I feel like that's lost in a lot of ways today.
except for baby Larian Studios. Why did you guys have to go and create a community YouTube channel? And even more so, why am I not in it? I get it, like Duality and Co-Carnage are really cool, but like I made a lot of videos on Baldur's Gate. Come on, man. Initially, I had wondered how Warframe was able to hold on to such a consistent player base for so long. Regardless of good or bad updates, new games, or financial declines, their core audience has stayed rock solid for over a decade now, and in and of itself, that is a feat that very few games have accomplished. It wasn't until I started streaming my experience over on Twitch, playing the game for the very first time, that I was exposed to the game's community, and in that, I noticed how positive they are. An eerily similar experience I had with Final Fantasy XIV, but altogether completely different. Many players have been playing the game since alpha. They've unlocked everything in the game, effectively beaten the game, logging thousands of hours. However, they are still logging in regularly, even daily. They are out there guiding new players and doing things that they've done thousands of times because they love the game that much. And I was curious where that comes from. Well, sure, the game has regular updates, new content, new weapons, and new Warframes. I couldn't see how Warframe could become somebody's daily driver until I saw how Digital Extremes engages with their community. Oftentimes, developers lay silent between content releases and major updates. They put their head in the sand, they let a couple people go out and respond or repost on Twitter, and only come out of hibernation to make promotional content to drive up interest around the next big update or major change. In that time of silence, I think it makes it feel like updates are further apart than they actually are. Players aren't engaged, and when they aren't engaged, they lose interest. And DE makes it really hard for you not to feel engaged as they support their community like they're content creators rather than game developers.
True. A lot of games do that. One that we all know pretty well.
Every single week, they go live on YouTube and Twitch to do something they call a dev short, where Steve Sinclair, the CEO of Digital Extremes, together with Rebecca Ford, the once community manager and now creative director of Warframe, just talk to the players for 15 minutes. They answer questions, they tell them about things that they're working on, they joke around. They do this every week. What other game studios give that kind of transparency to the players? What other game companies are that grounded to make sure that their
I remember I talked to someone at Overwatch and they wanted to start doing that, and then they just never did it. And I think the people that were going to do that got laid off.
CEO of all people is constantly in contact with the players. None. And that's not all they do. Every Wednesday and Thursday, they host Prime Time over on Twitch, and each of them have their own separate streams for English and Spanish, where the developers and community managers come out to play the game with the players. Have you ever heard of anything more absurd than that? Developers actually playing their game and playing their game with players with an audience up to 250,000 viewers, giving away skins, Twitch drops, different items, premium currencies.
Holy shit, I just realized in the bottom left, 129,000 viewers.
They play trivia games.
Wait, no, it's a VOD. So that means it's live. That's views. It's okay. That's not totally accurate then. That's not live views. That's people who viewed this entirety, whether they watched it live or VOD,
chat,
which is still a lot, but
community
like
art submissions. They are more involved with their community
than
a little
bit
ever has been, and the fruits of their labor shine so brightly. It shines in how positive their community is, how engaged they are, how well the game is developed and supported, how solid the monetization is. It's why they are allowed to take the risks with the games like they have, and even with future games in development like Soulframe.
Oh, shit.
The players know that they're appreciated. They know that the developer is trying to achieve something, and they can tell that they truly love what they are doing. They can clearly see that these developers love their game, and it shows. Digital Extremes recognizes what many developers have slowly started to drift away from, that players are a part of your game, and without them, your game wouldn't be what it is. And in fact, for Warframe, that's literally true. In the early days of Warframe, movement is exactly what you would have expected the game to be. Just a over-the-shoulder.
There are way too many games that act like that. Not only as a player, but even creator side. And it's like, I've worked with some other games, like sponsors or whatever. And it's like, sometimes you're just a number, you know? It's fucked up. Like, it really is kind of fucked up. But I think the games that do treat their players like super well like that
Third-person shooter.
are
It had sliding and running, but overall the movement was slow.
getting more and more
Players
rare,
discovered an exploit,
but they
where
deserve all the
called it
success.
Zoran-coptering, where they could essentially fly across maps, sling themselves across maps, and complete missions in a fraction of the time. Instead of removing this, instead of standing against the players and changing something that the players were enjoying or doing, they recognized that the players were exploiting this because they were trying to avoid something that was actively ruining their experience. So Digital Extremes revamped the entire movement system for the game, reworking it from the ground up to be one of the most fluid movement systems in all of gaming.
What?
This video took a lot longer to record than I thought it would. It's already dark outside. You might actually end up hearing my cat chattering with another cat that shows up outside, this little orange cat. They just kind of talk through the window. It's adorable. Over the last few years, I've noticed a conversation that's popped up between game developers and game journalists, and they're talking about how cold and unfeeling and how unsympathetic gamers are towards the plight of the industry, how some of these companies are failing, how games are failing, how companies are going out of business, how people are losing their jobs, and they are absolutely right. Because at the end of the day, we are consumers, we're buying games, and if you do not make a game that we want to play and it wasn't worth our money and we wasted it on your game and you go out of business as a result of that, that's on you. You got what you got coming to you.
I don't know about that. I think there's a lot of times where sometimes they get hit with some unfortunate circumstances. Considering I play one of the games that has probably had more of those than any other game in a long time. So there's sometimes other things at play, and those are absolutely not the developer's fault and the people that actually worked on the game's fault. And sometimes it's corporate decisions. And to say that like they got what they deserve, I just don't really agree with that.
Didn't used to be like that.
Thanks, Big Red, buddy. Appreciate it.
And I think the reason why is because back, and this is something that's just kind of evolved over time, is that many of the companies that are out there right now, some of the biggest companies that are out there right now, came from humble beginnings, no different than Larian Studios or Digital Extremes or anyone else that's out there. But when they were smaller, they felt like they were one of us because they were one of us. They were players that were making games because they wanted to make cool games for them to play and for other people to play. But as time went on and they got bigger and they made more money and they started selling out and literally selling out to other companies, what ended up happening is that conversation changed. That interaction that we used to have, that relationship that we used to have with the developers, that parasocial-like relationship that we had, started to disappear because they started talking to us through a veil of money. It was always apology letters and tweets that are just trying to manipulate
Or actually get nothing.
the truth more than anything else. It's all gaslighting. You're not trying to help us. You're not trying to do anything for us. You're just trying to make money. And to be honest with you, it's cowardice. It's so disgusting. Like, if you just want to make money, go make money, dog. Say you're doing it for it. I'd almost have more respect for a company that just laid their nuts out on the table and said, we're doing it because we want your money. Rather than trying to paint it in these colorful words to try to make it feel like they're our friends and really this is all just for you guys. That's not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's also the idea of like perspective too with that. Like sometimes like people really do believe that they're doing that, but it's like they haven't gotten hit with a different perspective, you know? And maybe, I mean, like real talk, maybe just put their heads in the sand and like don't want to listen to another side.
What it is. I think there's a lot to learn from a company like Digital Extremes, especially in the way that they stay connected with their audience. That level of connection brings in insane levels of endearment where the people that are playing the game just genuinely love the work that the people are doing because they like the people too. They like both things at the exact same time, and that's an awesome thing to have. My cat is freaking
I was about to say, I'm so distracted by the cat in the background.
That's an awesome thing to have because players at the end of the day do want to be appreciated. We want to be heard. And the more we're heard and the more we're appreciated and the more that the game is actually worth our time and money, the more likely we are to continue to invest in that game and invest in future things that you do. However, the vast majority of the industry is really doing nothing other than creating unloyal fan bases. Sure.
True. And unfortunately, that's just kind of where it's at with free-to-play especially. You're always chasing hype cycles. I think that that's why you're seeing people start to regress and want those like box titles where they pay $60 and they get all the content, and then that's it. Like, you know, they don't have to get in for free, but then they spend on, like, they get, you know what I mean? Like, they end up spending the whole way through. That's why, like, BG3 was a big hit. Helldivers, I thought, was a big hit for a long time, even though it's kind of fallen off quite a bit, but they also recently had, like, a big patch or something. People were excited and think it's going to be okay. Space Marine, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, and its DLC. So there's a lot of good things too, but here's the thing, the big one at the end of the day that hasn't been mentioned at all. All of these free-to-play games are most typically PvP games where it's online first-person or third-person shooter games. And you want more players because more people means more people can queue. More people queuing means faster games. Faster games mean people are going to play more. More people playing means people are going to be more competitive. More people being more competitive means they're going to be more invested. And that's where they get you. So it's like, for like, if you're an FPS fan, I don't think that's going to change for you.
Your game might be doing okay
but
now,
if you don't,
but
you like games outside the
else
FPS
comes
space,
by, like
I think
Digital
that
Extremes or
you're
something
actually
like
not in the
that,
worst spot.
that does the same things that they do, or better, your audience is gone. And I think there's a lot to learn from this. I really do. That's the whole reason I make these wake-up call videos in the first place, is because I think there is a lot to learn from some of the best studios.
Yeah, the thing is that they're not going to listen to this. No one will.
On the market.
And that's no dig on this guy at all.
A ton of these.
I mean,
videos
like,
because they're a lighthouse, an opportunity for those
the people who need to
drifted
watch this are like
too
the
far
corpus
away
side.
to finally see the light,
90% of the
come
time.
back to land, touch grass, and find out what players like, what players really want, and how to talk to players again.
True.
Anyway,
True.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
This is really good. I'm so glad I got recommended this one.
If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. If you like the video and want more people to see it, throw a like on the video.
Very, 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 very good video. Unfortunately, I don't think the people who need to see it are going to see it. Because it's mostly like corpus side. You know, because there's a lot of devs in a lot of games that really work on it because they're passionate and they like that game. But on the corporate side, like, you know, it's to them, it's the same thing as going and working in finance in some Fortune 500 company, you know? So, good video though.